The empath's anger is not loud. It doesn't explode like a storm. It unfolds like silence after thunder. When a narcissist finally pushes an empath too far, they expect tears, drama, or pleading. But instead, they meet stillness. That stillness is what terrifies them most. Because for the first time, the empath's heart closes and their compassion turns into clarity. The narcissist has mistaken kindness for weakness, and now they're about to learn the difference. Empaths rarely get angry in the way others do. Their anger is calm, intelligent, and deeply spiritual. It's not about revenge, it's about boundaries. The narcissist, who feeds on chaos, doesn't know how to fight someone who refuses to play the game. When the empath detaches, the narcissist feels an unfamiliar emotion, powerlessness. Their control begins to slip, and with every act of silence, the empath takes back the energy once stolen. The tragic fate of the narcissist begins the moment the empath stops caring. For years they believed they could do anything. Lie, insult, betray, and the empath would always forgive. But when that forgiveness ends, their entire illusion collapses. The narcissist's identity depends on admiration and control. Without it, they face a terrifying truth: they're empty. The empath's anger doesn't destroy them, exposure does. Because truth is their worst enemy. When an empath gets angry, it's not impulsive, it's divine. It comes after patience, compassion, and endless chances. It's anger born from clarity, not emotion. The empath sees the narcissist patterns for what they are: manipulation, fear, and projection. And once they see clearly, they no longer respond. That's when the narcissist panics. Their favorite weapon, emotional reaction, no longer works. The silence feels like suffocation, and they start unraveling from within. At first, the narcissist mocks the empath's detachment. They say things like, "You've changed," or "You think you're better than me." But deep down, they sense the shift. The energy that once centered around them is gone. The empath no longer tries to explain, fix, or soothe. That calm indifference becomes unbearable for the narcissist. It's not rage they fear, it's irrelevance, because nothing wounds their ego more than being ignored by someone who once cared. The empath's anger isn't about revenge, it's about reclaiming peace. They stop arguing because they realize you can't reason with someone who thrives on chaos. They stop proving their worth because they finally remember it. The narcissist mistakes this for weakness, not realizing its power. The empath no longer needs to win, they just need to heal. And in that moment, the narcissist loses the only source of emotional energy that ever made them feel alive. When the empath walks away, the narcissist begins their descent. They'll seek out replacements, desperate to fill the void. But every new person feels dull compared to the one they lost. Because the empath wasn't just love, they were light. The narcissist fed on that light, mistaking it for their own glow. Now, without it, their world dims. What follows is the quiet agony of withdrawal. The narcissist begins to feel what they once made others feel: emptiness. The empath's anger transforms them. They no longer chase closure. They create it. They stop begging for understanding from people who enjoy confusion. Their boundaries become sacred, their silence powerful. This rebirth confuses the narcissist, who can't comprehend healing without drama. They keep poking, testing, and provoking, hoping to reignite the old emotional dance. But the empath doesn't flinch. They've learned the ultimate lesson: peace is the loudest response. In time, the narcissist realizes that the empath's anger wasn't hatred. It was liberation. It was the soul saying, "No more." And that rejection becomes their greatest punishment. Narcissists crave control, not connection. When the empath removes their attention, it's like oxygen leaving the room. They can't survive long without admiration. They'll spiral, searching for new supply. But nothing replaces the depth and warmth they took for granted. The tragic fate of the narcissist isn't a curse from others, it's the consequence of their own choices. Every manipulation, every lie, every cruel word becomes a ghost that haunts them when the empath is gone. They lose the person who reflected their false greatness, and without that mirror they face their true reflection, lonely, hollow, and small. The empath's anger didn't destroy them, it revealed them, and that truth will echo for the rest of their life. The narcissist doesn't understand that the empath's anger is never about destruction, it's about truth. When the empath finally speaks, their words cut deeper than rage ever could because they come from experience. They name the lies, the manipulation, the abuse. They expose what the narcissist spent years hiding, and for the first time, the narcissist feels powerless. Not because they've lost control of the empath, but because the empath has found control of themselves. To the narcissist, anger means loss of control, but the empath's anger is different. It's composed, intelligent, and final. It's not a storm, it's sunrise after darkness. The light reveals what's been festering in the shadows. The narcissist can't stand that kind of illumination. Their charm begins to fade. Their excuses sound hollow. The people who once believed them start to question. And one by one, the illusions collapse under the weight of truth. When the empath grows angry, they stop explaining. They realize that explanations only feed the narcissist's power. Every defense becomes another opportunity for manipulation. So instead of talking, they act. They block the calls, ignore the messages, and cut off the energy flow. The narcissist mistakes this silence for weakness, but it's actually strength, the kind of strength that terrifies them. Because silence doesn't beg. Silence ends stories. The empath's anger doesn't burn bridges, it builds boundaries. For years they gave love without limits, believing they could heal the narcissist's wounds. But love without boundaries is sacrifice, not salvation. When they finally say enough, they aren't being cruel. They're choosing self-respect. That decision feels like betrayal to the narcissist, because they confuse ownership with love. But for the empath, it's not betrayal, it's resurrection. The narcissist begins to unravel quietly. At first they act unfazed, pretending they've moved on, but behind closed doors their world begins to shrink. They try to recreate the empath's warmth through new relationships, but nothing feels the same. The new supply doesn't admire them like the empath did, doesn't understand their moods or rescue their insecurities. The narcissist starts realizing what they lost, the stability of unconditional care they mistook for weakness. They tell themselves, the empath will return. Narcissists always believe they can hoover their way back into someone's life. They might send nostalgic messages or try to play the victim. But the empath, now awakened, doesn't respond. That silence echoes louder than any argument. For the narcissist, silence is torture. It reminds them of how small they truly are when no one is watching, no one believing, no one feeding their endless need for validation. The empath's anger matures into wisdom. They no longer feel the need to prove the narcissist wrong or expose them publicly. They realize the narcissist exposes themselves with every lie, every new manipulation. Karma doesn't need help, it just needs time. The empath focuses on healing, on creating peace, on rebuilding a life untouched by chaos. And as they rise, the narcissist feels the absence of control like a slow, spiritual suffocation. The narcissist's tragedy is that they mistake love for weakness and anger for betrayal. They can't comprehend that the empath's anger came from pain, not hatred. The empath didn't want revenge, they wanted understanding. But when the narcissist refused to change, the empath chose self-preservation. That choice rewrote the balance. The narcissist becomes the chaser, haunted by memories of a love they'll never receive again in this lifetime. As the empath grows stronger, the narcissist grows desperate. They try to imitate healing, posting positivity, pretending to move on, but imitation isn't transformation. The empath's peace is real, the narcissist is staged. And deep down, they know it. Every quiet night becomes a reminder that the one person who saw them clearly and still cared is gone. The narcissist's curse is awareness without change, recognition without redemption. In the end, the empath's anger becomes the narcissist's mirror. It reflects every cruelty, every deception, every act of emotional theft. The narcissist sees themselves through the eyes of the one they hurt, and what they see terrifies them. Not a monster, but a hollow being desperate for control. The empath's anger wasn't meant to destroy, It was meant to reveal, and once revealed, there's no returning to the lie they once called love. The empath doesn't need to seek justice, because justice unfolds naturally. The narcissist begins to experience the emptiness they once inflicted on others. Relationships lose meaning, joy feels shallow, and admiration becomes exhausting to maintain. Their charm fades like a dying flame. Without the empath's light, they're left with the cold reflection of their own soul. And what they see isn't power, it's a void they can no longer fill. For years, the narcissist believed they could survive without empathy. They saw compassion as weakness and control as strength. But when they lose the empath, they lose access to the one energy that made them feel alive. They start chasing what they once mocked: peace, stability, understanding, but find none of it. Because these things can't be stolen, they must be earned. And earning them requires humility, something the narcissist has never known. The empath, meanwhile, is transforming. Their anger becomes discipline. Their pain becomes clarity. They start recognizing red flags they used to ignore. They protect their energy like sacred ground. And the same heart that once absorbed chaos now radiates calm. This transformation confuses the narcissist, who still expects to see weakness. But what they see now is strength disguised as serenity, and it's the one thing they can't imitate. The narcissist tries to rewrite history. They tell others the empath was unstable, dramatic, or disloyal. They build false stories to regain sympathy. But truth has a way of revealing itself. Over time, their inconsistencies show. People start noticing that every relationship they have ends the same way, with destruction and denial. Slowly, their mask loses its shine, and the isolation they once imposed on others becomes their own punishment. When the empath becomes angry, they stop explaining the narcissist's behavior to themselves. They stop making excuses, like they had a rough past, or they didn't mean it. That mental freedom is powerful. It's the breaking of a spell. The narcissist feels that shift instantly. They no longer occupy mental space in the empath's life. For someone who thrives on being the center of attention, becoming invisible is the beginning of their emotional collapse. The narcissist's tragedy deepens as they realize that no one loves them the way the empath did. The new people they manipulate can't mirror the same warmth or depth. Every relationship becomes a desperate attempt to recreate what they destroyed. But imitation love never feels the same. It lacks authenticity, the very thing the narcissist can't create. Their punishment isn't being unloved, it's being incapable of truly feeling love at all. The empath, once broken by the narcissist's games, now learns how to use pain as power. Their anger becomes purpose. They help others see what they couldn't. They speak truth softly, without bitterness. They don't wish suffering on the narcissist, because they've learned that spiritual justice needs no assistance. Their peace is the proof that they've won. And while the narcissist searches endlessly for control, the empath has already found freedom. The narcissist's fate isn't sudden destruction. It's slow awareness. It's waking up each day realizing that no one truly trusts them. Their charm doesn't work. Their jokes fall flat, and their emotional games are transparent. Every time they look for admiration, they're met with indifference. That emptiness eats away at them, day by day. It's not karma that breaks them, it's clarity. Because seeing themselves without illusion is their ultimate punishment. The empath's anger marks the beginning of balance being restored. For the first time, the energy they gave away starts returning. Their mind clears, their heart softens, their sleep deepens. They stop walking on eggshells and start walking in peace. Meanwhile, the narcissist loses control of the very thing that defined them, the ability to manipulate emotion. Now every attempt to provoke falls flat. Every tactic fails. Their control has expired. Eventually, the narcissist becomes haunted by memories of what they once had. They replay conversations, moments of affection, and wonder when it all changed. They don't miss the empath. As a person, they miss the feeling of being powerful. But the irony is cruel. That power was never real. It existed only through the empathy they exploited. Now stripped of it, they face the truth they avoided for years. Without control, they are nothing. The narcissist doesn't understand that the empath's silence is a verdict. Every time they reach out and are met with calm indifference, it chips away at their ego. They realize that words no longer work, manipulation no longer bites. The emotional leash they once held has snapped. The empath no longer reacts, no longer explains, no longer participates. To the narcissist, that silence feels like death, the end of their influence, the end of their illusion. They begin to spiral. Without an audience to applaud or a heart to exploit, the narcissist is forced to sit with themselves, and they don't like the company. Every voice inside their mind is an echo of their own lies. Every silence feels like judgment. They can't distract themselves forever. Eventually, the chaos they once projected outward turns inward. What they once did to others, they now do to themselves, criticizing, deceiving, and destroying from within. Meanwhile, the empath starts to bloom. Their anger transforms into forgiveness, not for the narcissist, but for themselves. For every time they stayed too long, believed too much, gave too deeply, that forgiveness becomes liberation. They no longer identify as victims. They become survivors, teachers, healers. Their story changes tone. The same pain that once silenced them now becomes their voice. And that voice speaks truth without fear. The narcissist, on the other hand, begins to fade socially. Their charm no longer has the same effect because people can sense the emptiness behind it. Conversations feel forced, laughter hollow. Their eyes no longer shine with confidence. They flicker with insecurity. The act of maintaining their mask becomes exhausting. They start isolating, convinced the world has turned against them, when in truth, the world is simply reflecting back what they've always given. When the empath was angry, the narcissist saw it as rebellion. But in reality, it was rebirth. That anger wasn't destructive. It was cleansing. It burned away illusion, denial, and fear. The empath learned that some endings are sacred, that walking away is not cruelty, it's protection. They didn't curse the narcissist. They blessed themselves with peace, and that peace becomes the one thing the narcissist will never again experience. The narcissist often tries to return, months or even years later. They appear remorseful, nostalgic, speaking of change, but their apology isn't confession, it's strategy. They want to test the empath's boundaries, to see if the door is still open. But the empath's anger taught them wisdom. They don't fall for the same words twice. They've learned that closure doesn't come from the one who hurt you. It comes from the moment you refuse to be hurt again. Over time, the narcissist reputation starts to collapse. People talk, patterns emerge, truth surfaces. What was once dismissed as misunderstanding now looks like manipulation. Their lies no longer sound clever, they sound desperate. And as their social mask cracks, so does their self-image. The person they pretended to be disappears, leaving only the one they truly are empty, bitter, and terrified of being forgotten. The empath, by contrast, glows quietly. They don't brag, they don't boast. Their healing is soft, but visible. Calm eyes, steady tone, quiet confidence. They begin to attract people with the same energy they once gave freely. Genuine souls who value peace, honesty, and reciprocity. Their life expands in ways the narcissist can't comprehend. What the narcissist called weakness has become wisdom. What they called naivety has become power. The narcissist's anger replaces their emptiness. They start blaming the empath for everything. Losing control, losing image, losing peace. But this blame is just projection. Deep down, they know they caused their own downfall. Every manipulation, every lie, every cruel silence was a step toward their own isolation. The tragedy isn't that they were punished, it's that they punished themselves, one decision at a time without ever realizing it. By the time they finally understand, it's too late. The empath has moved on completely. New friends, new peace, maybe even new love. The narcissist looks back at what they once had and sees it clearly for the first time. The warmth, the loyalty, the safety, all gone. They realize the empath's anger wasn't destruction, it was prophecy. It warned them that they would lose everything they refused to value. And now the prophecy has come true. As time passes, the narcissist becomes a ghost of who they once were. The confidence they used to weaponize fades into insecurity. The control they once had over others turns into fear of abandonment. They live surrounded by people, yet feel utterly alone, because what they miss most isn't the empath. It's the feeling of being seen through someone else's light. But that light is gone, and no imitation can replace its warmth or purity. The empath, now at peace, doesn't even wish them harm. They've outgrown the need for revenge. They understand that hurting back only ties you to the same energy you escaped from. Instead, they wish healing, not reunion, not redemption, but awareness, because awareness is what the narcissist fears most. It's the mirror that shows them every unhealed wound they've ever hidden behind arrogance, charm, or cruelty. That's their true punishment, self-recognition. The narcissist begins to experience a strange kind of silence. It's not peace, it's emptiness. The noise of admiration is gone, the distraction of control no longer available. They start searching for meaning in places that once fed their ego. Social media, new lovers, work, but none of it satisfies. Because meaning doesn't come from being admired, it comes from being authentic. And authenticity is something they traded away long ago for power. There's an irony in their downfall. The very person they called too emotional, too sensitive, and too soft becomes the one who thrives without them. The empath's empathy becomes their strength. The narcissist's ego becomes their cage. They mocked emotions, yet emotions were the key to healing. They mocked vulnerability, yet vulnerability was the path to peace. Their arrogance blinded them to the truth that gentleness was never weakness, it was wisdom. The empath no longer needs to explain their story. They've learned that peace doesn't need an audience. Healing doesn't need validation. The narcissist chapter in their life becomes a lesson, not a legacy. They no longer look back with pain, only gratitude for what it taught them. Because the real victory isn't watching the narcissist fall. It's realizing you no longer care if they do. That's when freedom becomes complete. The narcissist's punishment is existence without connection. Every conversation feels shallow, every relationship transactional. They don't know how to love because they never learned how to see beyond themselves. They start craving what they once mocked: authenticity, compassion, emotional depth. But by then the people who could give it are gone. The narcissist's tragedy isn't that they're unloved, it's that they've become incapable of receiving love. Sometimes, the narcissist tries to start over, promising themselves they'll change. But change requires humility, and humility requires accountability. They may mimic remorse, but true remorse can't exist without empathy. And empathy is the very thing they killed to protect their ego. So they keep repeating the same cycle. Different faces, same endings, searching for fulfillment in control, and finding only emptiness. The tragedy is not punishment, it's repetition. The empath, having risen from the ashes, becomes a living contradiction to everything the narcissist believed. They prove that compassion can coexist with strength, that boundaries can coexist with love, and that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. The narcissist once thought they could break the empath, but instead, they forged them. What was once fragile has become unshakable, and that transformation is something the narcissist can never undo. Eventually, the narcissist fades into memory. Their name stops carrying pain. It becomes a lesson whispered in gratitude. That's who taught me how to protect my peace, the empath might say. The story doesn't end in revenge, it ends in peace. The empath's life moves forward, filled with people who value what the narcissist never did. And as the narcissist drifts deeper into loneliness, they finally realize that control was never love. It was fear. In the end, the empath's anger becomes sacred. It wasn't rage, it was awakening. It was the moment the soul said, enough. The narcissist's tragic fate is not that they were defeated, it's that they never evolved. They stayed trapped in the illusion of superiority, while the empath ascended into truth. One sought control, the other found freedom. And that's the difference between a heart that manipulates and a heart that heals. The latter always wins.